Hi guys, how are y'all? My name is Andy. I am a lawyer at the firm of Linebarger, Goggin, Blair, and Sampson. It's a firm that helps counties, cities, and school districts with their property tax work. I office out in Fort Bend County in Richmond. And before I get started, I also too just wanted to thank Pia Das, hi Pia, at the Career Resources Department. She was the one who really suggested, or when I approached her with the idea, she told me to run with it. And then later on in the race, Jose came along and sponsored it with all the food you see here. I thought that you guys would be fine with some Panera, but he said, no, we're splurging and getting Phoenicia. So thank Jose for that. And before I get started, too, and I guess Nazleen left, but I wanted to thank South Texas for having me. So thank you guys for coming. Be sure there is a packet right here that you should get before you leave. Does everybody have one? If you don't, get one before you go. So this presentation might be a little bit different than some other ones you've heard. I remember sitting where you sat when I graduated law school. I graduated in 2010. I started law school in 2007. And I remember sitting in those chairs at these lunch meetings, and a high percentage of them bored me to tears, right? And so my main goal today is just not to bore you guys, and so your faces don't fall into Phoenicia, but and to keep you motivated, to keep you staying around. At the end, I've got 5 books up here from my personal collection that I'm going to give out to the people who can answer 5 trivia questions associated with my presentation. So they're yours to keep. Those are some of the 5 books that have influenced me the most in my life and in my career, and so I wanted to pass it along. And in the packet, let me explain the packet. The packet is primarily 2 parts. There's one part that's I call it the potpourri pages, and that is along the same lines of my talk today. It's kind of little hints and tips and tricks about law school that that didn't make their way into the presentation, but that I thought could add some value. That's the first part. The second part is what I call the resources page, and that's our pages, and I listed books, both law books and non-law books, podcasts, and websites and blogs that have affected me, because I've in my life and in my brief career, some of the most transformational things that have happened to me have come from people I've never met, right? From entertainers or from authors or from journalists, and so I have been affected by a lot of these, and I just wanted to share them with you guys. So I hope those will help out with you guys. So here I am. So why did I come to give a talk to you? Why did I entitle today's presentation, The 5 Things You Need to Know as a Law Student and as a Young Lawyer, but that law school won't teach you? I'll tell you it's because I remember exactly what it felt like to be where you are. I remember what it felt like to be a 1L, a 2L, a 3L, and then to be a brand new lawyer, right? My time in law school was, I didn't exactly fit in. I was the first lawyer in my family. I kind of went to law school by default. Something at the end of my college career fell through, and I felt like I needed more time, and it might be good to get a graduate degree. So 2 LSATs later, I found myself in law school, surrounded by a bunch of people who knew exactly what they wanted to do, right, at the law school I went to. A lot of smart people, a lot of people whose parents were in the legal profession, who knew the lingo, and who kind of had a direction with where they were going. And I did my best to ensure that no one really knew that I didn't have any clue what I was doing. So, and the same thing happened when 4 years later, when I graduated from law school, I entered the legal profession, kind of unsure of what I wanted to do, unsure of even where I wanted to live or practice or take the bar. And I bounced around the country, kind of to the East Coast, to the West Coast, and found myself here. So I came today, and I wanted to talk about a few things, because I remember exactly kind of not knowing how to sort the process out, not knowing what was important in law school and what was just noise, not knowing how to figure out what I wanted to do after I graduated, right? That's the big question everybody asks, what are you going to do after you graduate? It's the question that kind of hangs over you your entire 3-year career. And so I remember just the confusion that I felt. And it wasn't confusion like walking around like World War Z, like a zombie or anything, but it was just, I never really had a good firm grasp on what I wanted to do or how to do it at either juncture, in law school or as a lawyer. So I wanted to come today and just share a little bit about my story and a few of the things that I think are important. Because I started law school 10 years ago, which is hard to believe, but those 10 years in law school and then after have given me time to kind of filter through what works, what doesn't work, what worked for me, what works for other people, what didn't work for other people. And so I've kind of coalesced some of these things into the points that I wanted to talk to you about today. So thank you so much for having me. And yeah, so 5 points. That's what I entitled this. The 5 things you need to know as a law student and as a young lawyer, but that law school won't teach you. Okay? So let's dive right in. The most important, or the first thing I think you need to know as a law student and as a young lawyer is that you really have to believe in and trust how you interface with reality. The first thing you need to know is you need to believe in and trust how you interface with reality. As I mentioned earlier, law school and again when you leave law school and become a lawyer are really confusing times. The transition from undergraduate to law school is intense, y'all know that. And then the transition from law student to young lawyer is even crazier because you go through, there's a total values change, right? There's a total change of what's important. That you probably noticed that when you were an undergrad and you came to law school. You enter this whole new society, this whole new culture where the lingo's different. What is prized, what is sought after is vastly different than what you thought in undergrad. The same thing is true when you graduate from law school, pass the bar, and go be a young lawyer. What you'll find and what I found is that the tasks, the practices, and the things that you spend your time as a law student doing are a lot different on the outside. Like the things matter differently. Different things are important, right? And when this happens, I think we do something that's natural for humans to do. Humans are a really social species, right? We function best in tribes. We take a lot of cues from each other. We base a lot of our patterns of behavior, our beliefs, and the way we act on the people that surround us, right? I think we do it more unconsciously than we even think we do. But we do it even more so when we are in these new situations where we don't know what to do, right? And I count law school and when you graduate and you go off and become a young lawyer as situations where you're a rookie, where you don't know what's going on. And in those situations, it's very natural, as all of you know, to take your cues based on what other people around you do. I remember when I was in law school, like an example of this was, so I came in as a 1L and I had no clue like about anything, I promise you. I didn't even know what a tort was. I don't think I even really was sure that there was a bar exam at the end of law school. I don't know. But one example of this is, how does everybody in law school study? What do they use? Outlines, right? So I had no clue. Like I didn't know that outlines were this magical document that you're supposed to that bring you success on law school exams, right? But everyone else did it, so I was like, well, I think I should do it too then, right? Everyone else has these 100-page single-spaced Times New Roman 10 outlines. I gotta make my own, copy other people's, whatever you do there. So that was what I was taking my cues from other people. And then 3 years later, I finally realized that I don't learn well by outlines. I just didn't. I learned best by hearing things. I learned best by, closing my laptop and thinking about things. Another example of how I took cues from other people in law school was on the kind of jobs I applied for. So I was going to school at Vanderbilt, and a lot of people were going for these big civil litigation firms, these prestigious firms in big cities, right? So I was kind of like, I don't really know what I should do, so I should apply to them, right? I mean, and luckily they all declined me when they saw my GPA. But the point is that I didn't know what I was doing, or I didn't know how to make my way through the confusion of how to apply for jobs or how to study, what was best for me to study. So I just did what everyone else next to me was doing, right? I did what all the other smart people around me were doing. So I did outlines, and I applied for these jobs, and only 2 or 3 years or 4 years later did I realize, oh, like none of these people had any clue what they were doing either. And that is the one thing I would convey, and I think is difficult when we're in these stressful situations when you don't know your way. And that can be anything. It can be what job you want, but it can be how you structure your life, what you value is important, who you hang out with. Do you gossip? Do you hang out with people that are boring or interesting? Or are you ashamed of the things that interest you? What we do is we latch on to what others around us do. And I have learned, I think it's really important for you as law students, and then even more when you get into your career as a young lawyer, to really trust how you interface with reality. Like, I've really come to believe, I would die by this, that the most important thing that each and every one of you possesses is your own unique way of seeing the universe, of filtering reality. Because you're like Google. You've been absorbing all this data your whole life. You've been filtering it, right? Storing it up, seeing what works with you, seeing what doesn't work for you. And that's like everybody, I don't know, people call that trusting your gut, right? But that is the most important thing you have. And the moments or the times when you betray that and you do what other people are doing just because you think that's what they would, well, if they're doing it, I should do that. That's when you run into trouble. The happiest moments of my life, or the things that I'm most proud of, are often sometimes the mistakes that I've made, but when I trusted my own gut and I didn't do what other people wanted me to do. And again, this doesn't have to be, trusting your gut doesn't have to be in these big moral decisions, right? Like, do you laugh at an inappropriate joke, or do you belittle someone? They happen every day in law school, and they happen often in your young legal career. How you construct your life, what things you value, what things you go for, what types of jobs you want. And so I would urge, the first point that I would say is I would urge every one of you, like, really stand by how you view reality. Really stand by what works for you and be confident in that. Because there's going to be times in law school where the whole school of fish is going a certain way, right? And the easiest thing is just to zig when everybody zigs, but you might need to zag. And I think the happiest you can be in life is when you are confident in who you are, when you trust the voice inside you, and when you don't succumb to what other people might either tell you explicitly to do, what you should do, like, oh, dude, you should do this for a job, or you'd be a great politician. I got that all the time, and I was like, no chance. It can either be explicitly, where people are going to suggest careers or things that you should do, or it should be implicitly from the data you take in from the people you're around. I would urge you to stand by what you believe in, because the truth is that no one else has any clue what they're doing, right? That's the craziest thing that I've found since being in practice, is that I work alongside 50-year-old lawyers, 70-year-old lawyers, 30-year-old lawyers, and no one has this figured out. Like, no one has any clue, right? And so, not that they don't have any clue, but everyone is just doing the best they can. And so that frees you. Once you realize that no one has a handle on this, no one has it all figured out, it frees you really to trust your own gut and to trust to find your own way. And the only way you will find your own way is by listening to your own voice and getting through those struggles bit by bit. And I really think you will. So that's point one. I'm going to get a little sip of water. That was point one of what I think is important as a law student and young lawyer. The second point, and this is the one that's going to get me in trouble with people, and you are totally free to throw tomatoes or do whatever you want. But the second point about law school that I firmly believe about each and every one of you is, I would be willing to bet that you are studying way too much, okay? So let me walk that back just a little bit, because I have career resources up here, so I don't want them to stop me mid press conference. But okay, I said that I think you guys study too much. The reason I believe that each and every one of you, and in myself and every other law student, studies far too much, puts too much emphasis, energy, stress, worry into their academics is because I firmly believe that the purpose of law school is for you to learn how you best create value once you leave law school, right? I firmly believe that the purpose of law school is for you to learn, unique to you, how you are going to create value in a way that's most pleasing to you on the market, whether it's a legal market or whatever job market. One of the most interesting things for me to see since my time, so I've been out, or I started law school 10 years ago, finished 6 years ago, is to kind of look back and see how evenly things were divided into my 4 years at law school and my 6 years since. So the 4 years when I was in law school, certain things are valued, whether it's a high GPA or whether it's getting on law review, or I know in South Texas there's a lot of emphasis on best briefs and moot court and mock trial and things like that and getting involved. When I look back and I see how much, or I see what was prized, right? What were the measurables in law school? And I look back over the 6 years of my career, and I see what are the measurables there. It's almost as if you were the kids in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, right? And you're in one world, and you walk through a door, and everything on the other side is completely different. Like everything that matters in law school, it's not that it evaporates or anything, but it feels a little bit different on the outside, right? When you're in your legal career, when you're in your job career. And gone is the GPA. Gone is your law review. Gone is your focus on doing the best you can on tests, because no one is a professional law test taker. I've looked at all the jobs, right? No one gets paid to take law school exams. So knowing that, my question is, as I look back at my own life and try to examine what I was doing right or wrong, is like, why did I and my classmates and do all law students spend so much time studying, like spend so much time in worry, in excess stress in the textbooks? And I don't think I have a good answer for that. I don't know why. I think it happens because law school and the academic life, right, where you're learning your classes and you have your exams, that's kind of like the through line. That's kind of like what is the backbone of your law school experience, right? And that's fine. The problem is they drop a bunch of you guys into this system. You're dropped in here. You're high achieving. You're smart. You want what's best for you. You want to do the best you can. You want to win. You want to make sure that your career or you're taken care of, right? And there's really no disclaimer that says, be really careful, because you're going to walk through that Narnia door in 3 years and everything is different out there, right? So I think when you're in law school that there needs to be a lot of emphasis on how you create value on the legal market. And I say creating value because that's what a job is, right? You're creating value for a firm or a company or for yourself if you're solo. But I just worry that that's impossible given the demands or given the social pressure to excel on these exams. And I'm very cognizant. I know I was fortunate enough that I did not have a minimum GPA to maintain. And I think there is one at South Texas. And so I'm very cognizant that I'm not saying like tank on purpose or anything like that. But I will say that when you bought your 3 years of law school, because that's what you did, you paid 3 years, right? And you gave 3 years of your life or 4 years of your life. You gave up some earning potential, and you came here. And I think what you need to know, or what's important to know, is you purchased with those 3 years, you purchased a laboratory to kind of figure out how you were going to interface with the market when you get out. I really do think, now that I'm out of law school and have been out for 6 years, that that's the most important question you can answer. I think it's very important to answer the question of the first job, right? That's what we're all going for, that first job right out of law school. But I would caution against just going after that first job. I would also recommend that you spend time thinking about how to create opportunities after that first job, right? My point is, I think that when you have so much time and so much energy spent on essentially what is information regurgitation on a law school exam, that it's almost impossible to live a balanced life, to live a life where you are building opportunities for yourself in the market afterwards. And so that's my second point. And you can come and you probably say, well, Andy, what am I supposed to do with my time in law school? Like if I reduced my hours of studying, which I look back and I estimate that I probably spent 80% of my energy studying or doing academics or things like that. What are the things you can do? There's plenty. Like one of the things that I'm most ashamed about when I was a law student was I was at Vanderbilt for 4 years, and I went into a courtroom twice during my 4 years at Vanderbilt. And the second time was when I was sworn in as a lawyer, right, by the Supreme Court. My second time was in the Supreme Court, right? I think a huge thing that law students don't do, at least I didn't obviously do it enough, was go to court. Like, you reading opinions written by court, or by judges in court. You're studying all these different areas of law: divorce law, contracts law, criminal law, constitutional law. Go watch and see. Like you live in Houston. Like there's 2 huge courthouses downtown. Go watch and see what the hearings are like there. Because through that's how you're going to learn. Oh, I kind of like what they do. I kind of like what the family lawyers do, or I don't like what criminal lawyers do because I don't want to represent someone that's guilty. Right? It's through those observations that you're not going to get them with your nose in a book. I didn't, and I didn't get any. You can get them through reading, but I'm telling you, and you shouldn't dodge that 100%. But there's things you can only learn by watching and by doing, right? And I think it's really important. Also, too, one of the major mistakes I made as a law student was I didn't go practice. I didn't, as a 3L or as a 2L, I didn't go take internships during the law school year. Everyone does during the summer. But one of the things I would counsel myself to do, and everyone, is once you're done with your 2L year in Texas, you can actually practice underneath a lawyer. You can, with the supervision of a lawyer, you can actually practice law. I'm not just talking about doing internships where you kind of go sit in an office by yourself and they pass you work. You can take depositions. You can attend hearings. You can argue in front of judges. You can do everything a lawyer can do. You can even get paid by the lawyer who you're underneath. And so it's by watching, it's by doing. And that's what I would, if I had to do law school over again, I would put a lion's share of my time on watching, going to watch what lawyers do, doing what they do, because the only way you're going to learn what you want to do is by doing it. The only way you're going to know what job you want to do is after you've been there 3 months, right, or after you've had enough time to do it. So try to approximate how to do things in law school as a law student that you're going to be doing when you graduate. And I think what you would find if you would watch and do, if you would go to the courthouses, talk to lawyers, what I think you'll find is those interactions with lawyers that you'll have, because I want you to go out there and talk to them too. Talk to them, introduce yourself, pass out your business card that you're going to make. It's through that you're going to make close relationships with lawyers in town, and that's how your opportunities open up, and that's how you'll discover how you create value for yourself. So don't do what I did and spend all your time studying and all your time trying to figure out internally what you want to do when you graduate. Just go try it. Go try it out. Go talk to people who are like you and try to figure out what they do, what they like about their job. There's a book that I'm not giving away today called Stumbling on Happiness, and it's by Dan Gilbert. And he wrote that we often think that we're so special, that our lives are really, that no one is like us. But what we don't really understand when it comes to being happy and being fulfilled is that there are a lot of people who are like us. And if you want to approximate what you might enjoy doing, it's good to go ask people like you, hey, do you like doing this? We spend so much time thinking that you must be unique or no one must understand. But if you go, one way to kind of figure out what you might be good at is to go ask people with your kind of same makeup. Do you enjoy what you do? Do you enjoy working an office job? Are you having fun being an investigator? What's it like to be a judge? Do you get bored working alone all day? Does it, do you take the weekends off? Like, these are questions that you can ask to kind of fill out and kind of flesh out what you will do when you graduate law school. So the first point that I said was trust your gut and trust how you interface with reality. The second point that I have is that I think you study too much, and I think you should give yourself permission to go explore the legal world of Houston and go see what you want to do and try out what you want to do, and not spend so much time worrying about if you'll like it or not. Just go try it out. My third point is that the third thing I think you need to know as a law student and young lawyer is that while technology has really advanced how we look for jobs and has helped us on the job hunt, I think it's done two things that have kind of clouded reality. So I've been on a lot of job hunts since I graduated. If I told you how many jobs I've had since 2010, you'd walk out with your Phoenicia in hand, I promise you. But it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do. So I've had a lot of experience on job hunts. And one of the coolest things is, right, the internet. I mean, it's all in your inbox. It's all on Craigslist. It's all on, and Craigslist is a good place, by the way, to look for jobs. I've gotten 2 firm jobs off of Craigslist. But it's all on Career Builder. It's all on Monster, right? And so I think that has conditioned us to misunderstanding the job market. The ease with which you can see job openings, like anytime you want to, has led us to misunderstand the job market in 2 real ways. The first is, all right, trivia question number 1. Here's a trivia question. And this is based off a lot of research I did, meaning like 10 minutes of Google research, but what percentage of jobs total are advertised?
5.
So raise your hand. 5? So I'm talking about jobs advertised that are out there on sites, Texas Bar Journal, classifieds, newspapers, everything that is out there. If you could guess what percentage? 2. 20. 15. 7. That guy's right. You get a book, okay? You get the helmet. 20%. You do later. But that wants to talk already, man. He's feeling himself. But okay, 20% of jobs are advertised. That's all the jobs that you can find. That's all that are on STCL Simplicity. That's all the jobs that are in the Texas Law Journal. That's all the jobs that are in Craigslist, on Monster, on Resume Builder, whatever, Career Builder, whatever builder there is, right? That means, if you do the math, for every job that's advertised, there are 4 just as open, just as solid, that you don't know about, that are not advertised. So I think because I've been on what happens is you go on these job hunts, or you don't have a job, right? And everybody tells you looking for a job is a full-time job. So you spend your 8 hours a day kind of surfing the net, trying to figure out things, typing in your resume over and over again to the same things. It gets really boring really quickly, hitting submit, and then usually never hearing from anyone, right? Is anybody else? Okay. So I'm not alone. It wasn't just me. But there's a couple points about this. If 20%, every job, and more that you're probably even finding, if that only represents 1/5 of the jobs, doesn't it make sense for you to spend only 1/5 of your time looking for those at those openings, right? If there's 80% of the jobs are out there, just as ready to be filled, but aren't advertised, doesn't it make sense for you to devote 80% of your time to trying to find those? That's something I didn't do, and I think the math backs it up. Like, it really makes sense. Now, I'll get to how you can do that in a second, but there's really clear reasons why only 20% of jobs are advertised, and that's because employers don't want to interview a ton of people. So in my office, me and my couple paralegals just interviewed for a receptionist position, right? We had someone leave, and we interviewed, and I was so excited, like, get to meet all these new people, yay, like coming in, and they get to interview, and you're so, oh, this could be the replacement, oh, she could be the replacement, right? After 2 of those, it gets really boring. Like, you ask the same questions, they tell you the same, they tell you yes 100 times over and over. It's not fun to interview people. It just gets old. And employers would much rather hire from within or based off someone a testimonial of someone they know. Like if I came to my employer and said, this is someone we know, we should hire them, that's what they want to do. And that's what we did in our situation. We hired someone that had worked for the firm in a different capacity. So the point is that there's a reason why these jobs there's only 20% that are advertised. And another thing is, think about this with me. If 20% are advertised, right, and most people are lazy. We're all lazy. We all like to do the minimum amount of effort and hope that the maximum amount of results come, right? I'm as guilty as anybody else. Those 20% of jobs that you find, everyone's going after those. Everyone's applying on Indeed. Everyone's applying on Craigslist, right? What people aren't doing is doing the hard work, playing the long game, and going for the 80% that aren't advertised. I think it makes a lot more sense, because that's a way to stand out of the herd, is to leave the 20% is to make a gut call, or a mathematics call actually, and say these 20% that everyone's going for, I'll put in some work to those. It's okay to spend 20% of your time, but the real payoff, the real reward happens when you go out and you try to find those jobs that are the 80%, that are not readily available to you on your smartphone, right? That aren't on Twitter or on LinkedIn or things like that. I think there's one thing, but how do you do this, right? That's the next question you should have for me. Okay, well, how do I go find those 80% of jobs? And this is where you're too smart for your own good. You just go ask people. You just go out there into the world, into the courthouses. You email lawyers. You meet lawyers. You play the long game, as I call it. The short game is going for the jobs that are advertised, that you can get, you'll get a ding letter from or whatever. Thank you for applying. The long game is going out there into the world, talking to people, letting people see that you're a nice person, and asking where those jobs are. What I have found, what I found is the single most important thing for looking for jobs. If you said, what is the most important thing for meeting lawyers, asking for jobs, inquiring where positions are, it's just to be nice. Just be nice. Humans are remarkable for how well we take care and how much we care for strangers, right? Before today, I had met two people in this room, right? Pia and Jose. I talked to some of you online via email. And yet here I am, we're complete strangers, but I have opened up I have done work for you. I'm giving things away. I want you to email me. I've given you my business card and said in any way that I can help your career, I'm happy to. And I'm nothing special. Like a lot of people, it's a natural human, it's a natural human behavior to want to help other people. But you only trigger it through interactions. You only can trigger it when I meet you and John, right? Yeah. John's a very nice guy. Like, if he's Ted Bundy, I don't want to help him, right? But John's a nice guy. And so John, I opened up my Rolodex to John. I opened up my treasure chest to John. Sarah the same way, right? I just met him. I talked to them. Each one of you too. But humans do this. And we live in fear as law students that the job market is some kind of Cormac McCarthy-esque, Armageddon out there. You eat what you kill, and once you get it, you're all on your own. But the dirty secret, or what I've learned is the secret, is if you just go out there and you be nice to people, things open up to you, man. Like taking the risk and making the first step and approaching lawyers, whether it's in an email or whether it's in an introduction. That's a great thing to do. And what you'll find on the other side of your fear and on the other side of you thinking, I probably shouldn't be talking to him, he doesn't want to hear from me, or get his business card, or I'll leave him or her alone, or, is that person is just like me and wants to help you in any way you can. Because when you do well, that makes me happy. When you do well, that makes that other person happy. Like, we want to help. Because that job market that's in your head that is that Cormac McCarthy kind of, wilderness, that's not reality. What's reality is there are a lot of people out there in Houston who are ready and willing to help. All you have to do is just go ask them and be nice. And I try not to use the words like connections or networking or anything like that. They're words, they mean things, because the shortcut to all that is just be a friendly person. Just be friendly. Just send them a thank you email or a thank you note right when you're done. Just prove that you're a nice guy or a nice girl and watch the floodgates open up. It's helped me. It's something that I've seen in my own life, me wanting to help people like you. And I think it exists for a lot of other people that we don't think about. So I will cut it short with one last point. I know I said 5, but I'll go 4. If you want the 5th one, I'll email it to you. But I know you're probably just ready to go and get those books, right? But that guy is. So first point of what I think is important to know as a law student and young lawyer was trust the way you interface with reality. Believe in how you function best, and don't listen to other people or don't take the advice of other people without filtering it first through that lens. Second point was, I think you study too much, and I think you should examine the purpose for which you're at law school. Know that time is a finite resource in law school, and use all the time you have to better yourself for when you're out of law school, to learn how you create value the best. The third thing that you need to know as a law student and young lawyer is don't let the technological developments of the job market cloud you to the realities that behind every job you find online, there's 4 more that are just as open. And don't let it cloud you to the fact that being nice, leaving a good impression on people is the way that you're going to find those jobs. So the last one, I'll end it on kind of something that's a little bit more, I guess, serious. So the 4th point is that stress will kill you. And being a lawyer is awesome. Like, you get to enter a great community of people who are smart, who are motivated, who want to change things. Every society here, Texas X, is all geared to improving society, the animal law. All these things are for helping. Lawyers have a strong incentive and a strong drive to help the weak, to help the powerless, to help those who are less fortunate. It's an awesome community. Everyone's smart. A lot of people have great families, right? It's a good fraternity or sorority to kind of be in. But there's a dark secret that you should know, and it's that the legal profession is one that struggles really, really hard with mental illness. And this one has a little bit of a personal relation to me, because you might have heard me say that I took 4 years to get through law school when it only supposed to take you 3, or at least at my law school. And that's because during the second semester of my 1L year, I had a major depressive episode and had to withdraw from law school to seek treatment. It took me 4 years because my law school would not let me, I could not rejoin my classes at 2L without having finished 1L. And so they let me kind of sit out for a semester and jump back in the next year. So it took me 2 years to get through 1L. You would think that I would have done twice as well, but I really didn't do much better the second go round. So it has a personal bent, because I remember, like I was saying at the beginning, I remember how it feels to be confused. I also remember how it feels to have life be awful because of depression, because of anxiety, because of suicidal thoughts. And I've struggled with depression since I can remember kind of figuring out how my thought pattern was, maybe 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, so kind of had a penchant for that. But I wouldn't want any of you guys here to struggle alone. Like, I remember struggling alone as a 1L, and it's a painful experience. In my depression, it wasn't all tied to law school. It wasn't all because of the studying, but it was just because it's such a new experience for a lot of people. It was a new experience for me, being away from, just kind of the people I was with, and the climate. There's a lot of partying. There can be a lot of alcohol. There's some alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and I would not want any of you guys to struggle alone with any of this. But the problem is, not only do we have a propensity to struggle alone with some of these issues, but lawyers are really bad with mental illness. Like, there's something about being a lawyer that seems to breed, the profession itself seems to breed a lot of people who struggle with mental illness. And the statistics back this up. There was a recent, the ABA did a study in conjunction with the Betty Ford Hazelden, which is like I think it's a clinic or a hospital for mental illness. And they surveyed 13,000 lawyers nationwide, right? And some of the numbers they came up with are pretty scary. Like, so here's the numbers. Anxiety, people who struggle with anxiety, 61% of lawyers, 3 out of 5 struggle with severe anxiety. Depression, 45%, almost half. One and two, you'll struggle with depression. I mean, just go down the line. 1 out of every 2 lawyers is going to suffer from severe depression. Social anxiety, 16.1%. Panic disorder, that's not a good mashup for exams, right? 8%. And here's where it gets a little bit tough is 11.5% of lawyers admitted to having suicidal thoughts at some point in their career. 2.9% admitted, so this is just not even the people who are hiding it, that they've done things that have harmed themselves, and 0.7% admitted to at least trying to kill themselves once. So you can take a deep breath. But it's a dark underbelly, and I think it's caused by some of the stressors of the profession. I think it's caused by how smart and motivated and how aware you are. Usually smarter and more aware people suffer from depression and anxiety because they're kind of aware of how they function through the world or how they progress through the world. And for some reason, it hits lawyers especially hard. And the second set of statistics is even more troubling to me. It's the problems that the drinkers in law, the drinking statistics that lawyers have. 36.4%, more than 1 out of 3, are problem drinkers, have problems with alcohol. This is my favorite or the least favorite statistic. 15% of doctors and surgeons are problem drinkers. 15%. 36.4% of lawyers are. It's like we're twice as bad as doctors and surgeons, who most people think are like, the people who are the most stressed out. Another troubling one for us young people, 32% of lawyers under the age of 30 struggle with drinking problems. And from the statistics, it seems that a lot of the problems develop right when they leave, when they go out of law school. People are not coming into law school, or they're not developing drinking problems while they're in law school. It's the profession. It's those first few 5 to 10 years out there that causes these problems. And you and I both know that drinking is just masking the problems, the depression, the anxiety, the social disorder, and things like that. So 2 things that I would say about this. I would say if any one of you that can hear my voice or is struggling with depression or anxiety or other mental illnesses, you please reach out. I have included in the packet, information. The Texas Lawyers Assistance Program is a confidential and anonymous phone line and email you can call. I've even listed the executive director's email in there, Bree Buchanan. And she's told me to tell you guys that you are covered. It's not just lawyers, it's law students as well. I put in the National Suicide Hotline because it's a real thing, man. Like if any of you are feeling those emotions, you got to call. Like you can't dwell in this alone. You can't fight this alone. Pia has told me that South Texas has contacts with counselors and therapists and things you can do through that, and I think she's included it somewhere.
There's a handout. Right?
Perfect. The handout that will talk to you about what's here institutionally for you to use, probably at low cost. And I also included the psychologytoday.com find a therapist or find a psychiatrist link in the packet. And lastly, email me, contact me if I'm your last resort or whatever. The point is, there's no need. The last thing I'll say is, with depression and anxiety and suicidality, all of these are reactions, if they're career-based, if they're law school-based, or if they're things about your career. None of those tools, and don't get me wrong, the law school, your career, your job, your GPA, your resume, those are all tools, and you're the craftsman. Those are all tools that you use to make your life better, to make money, to provide for you and your family. And the tool is never more important than the craftsman. And you're the craftsman. You're way more important than law school. You're way more important than your GPA. You're way more important than your job. You're way more important than any career clout you could have, right? So start realizing that you are the most important thing, and to suffer from depression and anxiety alone it breaks my heart. Because these things are going to happen. And the last thing I'll say, the second point is, start to be aware of yourself when you sense the warning signs, when you sense it creeping in, right? because it's going to happen statistically to most people in here. You're going to, at some point in your life, struggle with anxiety or depression. So start to now develop a sense of realizing what's happening. Start to realize the stress. Kind of sense it coming in, because until you acknowledge it, until you sense it, you can't do things to change it. And so, I guess just be aware of yourself, be aware of your feelings, and be honest with yourself. And realize, I promise you, it's not worth it. Like it's not like it's just a job. Law school is just about getting a job, right? The most important thing is that you maintain your mental health, because I've seen lawyers, I know personally lawyers who make a ton of money, who are the most famous lawyers in town, right? Who have the big shot clients, and they're miserable. And I wouldn't trade positions with them. I mean, it elicits laughter because everyone knows that, right? We all know the people that work themselves to death, that drink themselves to death. But work that back a bit. The most important thing that you can have is your mental health. You wouldn't want to make $1 million or represent the best clients if you're suffering from depression, because depression is hell. And each one of you, I trust that you don't suffer alone. And know that there are tons of other people. The statistics show it, and I'm living proof that there are tons of other people who are having a tough time with this. It's not as simple. Like law school and legal life is not as simple and as cut and dried as you think. So the best thing you can do, and what I'll end the presentation on, is reach out, start to be aware, and start to realize that none of the stress, none of the depression, none of anything that's coming from exams, from getting a job, is worth touching an ounce of your mental health. So that's my presentation. So hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you for having me. And I didn't tell you the fifth point, but it's not as important as that last one. So